this week we are looking at, actually, guys, just to kick back, can you let me know, can you hear me okay? Is the audio coming through all right? Are there any issues? Camera's currently off. I suppose I could put that on. Don't know if it's that important that you see me, but yeah, Kenneth, thank you. It's fine. Okay, so we are week 10 of 15-week module, which is essentially a 13-week module because we have weeks 14 and 15 are reading weeks. So we are, in terms of the module, approaching the end. We have 2 weeks of Easter coming up, so that'll lengthen it out a little. But at this point, we are reviewing just a lot of the content that we've went over, just to really not just recap, but really get a good grasp of it in our heads. So this week, this is our agenda. As you can see, we're looking at the HTML5 elements and code. Okay, and we're going to, and this will take you through an entire HTML5 page. And so it's very deliberate that we go through these things because these are going to be the main things that we should see in any page. And so we really want to focus in on those. We're going to have lots of examples through this, and then today's task, we'll get that at the end. It's an interesting one, but very useful. So the first one we're looking at is doc type, and as you probably know by now, this is the first thing you have on your page. Okay, a lot of these examples are just simple examples taken from W3C schools, but they just illustrate the point very quickly, very efficiently. And the doc type needs to be the first thing that we have in our page, okay, because that sets for the browser what type of page it is and what type of language ultimately it is, because we could be calling in, Ruby, Python, whatever, but we need to tell the page, or we could be working with PHP, but we need to be working with declaring that we're working with HTML. This is one of the few where it's not an actual tag in the structured sense, where we have, in that example, you can see, there's 2 HTML tags, opening and closing, 2 head, 2 title, 2 body, so on. This is just one that you declare at the beginning and you move on. It's 2 words, okay? Really simple. So it really shouldn't be an issue where you're setting up your page at the very beginning. I know if you're working in Dreamweaver, it will do this all by standard, and a lot of sort of editors will, but it is still important to get into that habit of declaring this particular type. Okay, I don't have an example, but if you look back, if you look online to what would be HTML4 but wasn't marketed as that, it was just the previous version of HTML. The doc type declaration is a lot longer. So when you contrast those two, this is a lot simpler. It's a lot more streamlined. So there's really no reason to be making a mistake here. Okay. HTML then, our next tag. Again, just working off the same example. This tells the browser that we're working with an HTML document. I get that this is all going back to the very beginning. But everything is going to be within these 2 tags. Okay, as you can see in the example, I know it's only a couple of lines, but it really doesn't matter what type of page we're looking at. Everything is still going to be between the 2 HTML tags. And so setting up your page, type it in, stick that off at the bottom, and then everything just goes in between. And again, really, you're just building your structure just in right from the very beginning. This is just the container for everything else. So this is going to wrap around absolutely everything. The head section we'll deal with, I think, next. Yeah, so it's going to deal with particular bits of code that will go at the top of the page. So in this example, it's a very simple one, but we have just the title. But there are examples there at the bottom which will show you, that's the other types of code that can go in there. So we can have our style with all our style sheets. We have base, we have our links. Our links and our style sheets can overlap because we'll be linking our style sheets. We'll have our metadata. We can have different different scripts. That could be Ruby, Python, could be JavaScript. That would probably be the most prominent one, certainly in this module. I wouldn't be looking for anything beyond JavaScript because we haven't really covered anything. So that would really be it. No script you don't need to worry about, but it's really just there as information as to here's what it can be, what it can hold. I'll see some more complex examples as we go through this this lecture. Yeah, so this is our first example. So yeah, so this is just working off Bootstrap. We worked on this last week. So again, it's just to show you just what. Let's see, yeah, just a quick head section. So this is a very simple page layout. Okay, it's not that big a page, as you've probably maybe worked with something similar to this last week. But you can. This is just the top part. But the head section we're working with, we don't see that on the page. Okay, everything we see on the page is from line 21 onwards, which is the body section of the page. This is all above it. As you can see, we've got our metadata at the top. We're defining our viewports. Sorry, we are naming the author. Sorry, guys, I'll just put in Daniel. So yeah, so our metadata is all there, and then we've got our link, just a link line in line 8 for our favicon. Our title, our CSS. Okay, and the great example, the great thing about some Bootstrap examples is that they will be commented. So line 14, line 17, we're just saying what's going on, and it's not always necessary because as you get more proficient, you won't need to have your Bootstrap core CSS commented, but it's still good practice just to pick these things out quickly. If for no other reason than the commented code is green, so it stands out a wee bit more than the other lines of code, so you can see it just stand out. But we've got those linked in, and that's just a simple example from a simple page. Okay. Yeah, so if we just skip out, I have these examples live, which I've just closed. So we can see this page in its entirety. Okay, I'm not going to go through it all at the minute because we'll maybe come back to it. But again, you can see the head section of the code right there. We've got our HTML called there, and then our doc type at the top. And this is just the simple the start of our web page. Everything else will continue. Okay, we can have as you can see, we're going to go into our actual code elements there. So the first one we've got is our header. So that's going to obviously deal with the top of our web page, but just structuring our code in a systematic, repetitive way gets you into that muscle memory element aspect where you just do it by rote and it just drills in and you know what you're doing because you do the same thing every time. So that it's a good process to get in with. Yeah, the next example, I'm not going to jump back into Keynote just at the minute because our next example is, I'm just contrasting these. So this is the BBC News website, obviously for today, and I've just pulled out the source code to inspect it here. So this is the head section. Okay, I've pulled down to the end just to identify where it ends. Okay, because as you can see, there's a lot going on, and the main thing here, I'm not going to discuss any of this code because it goes off into things that we don't need to worry about. Okay, we've got no script in there, so it's going way beyond what we're looking at. But as a means of contrasting a simple page compared to a more complex page, okay, this head section was 700 lines long, and well, yeah, so finishing on line 719, but more when you consider the gaps between 718 and 719. That's just one line of code, but a much more complex page with much more complex tools being put into play. But just to jump to the top, we will see the same things. Okay, we've still got our our HTML5 doc type declaration. We've got our HTML. We've got our head section. We're calling in our metadata. We've got our links. And then we're loading in CSS, JavaScript, everything else. Okay, we've got property types, lots of information that we need in the site, but it's a much more complex site than the Bootstrap example. And I don't expect any of us to be working on a site with a level of complexity of a BBC just yet, but to show you that contrast as to how different they can be, okay, just to show you that this is where it goes and this is important. Okay, we're working with polyfills here, and I'm not even going to touch those, but you can see hopefully see the difference in complexity, okay, that we're working in here. Covered that, and then so back to our presentation. So body text, then we're now into the part of the web page where people can start to see what we're actually designing. Everything else is going to help us implement what we've designed better, whether it's our CSS, JavaScript, or whatever. But we're now into the section where as this very simple example shows, it's the content of the document. This is going to be what people actually come to our page for or want to find out. And this will have everything in it. So it'll be text, hyperlinks, images, tables, lists, videos. It could be a game. When you think about HTML canvas, it could be maps. You name it, it will be in this section. And so this part will be probably the biggest part of the page. But this is where everything's going to be that you want people to see. So in the script, then this script, so we'll mostly be using the script tag for JavaScript. Okay, I don't expect anyone to be using anything else unless you've went off yourself and learned an awful lot on your own. But this can be used. This will contain scripting statements, or it'll point to an external script file through the source attribute. And in that, we're just think about your linking your CSS file. We link JavaScript exactly the same way. Okay, and JavaScript links in two different sections, two different areas of the page. Sorry. So this particular example, again from W3C Schools, very simple. So we click. It's straightforward. We click me to display date and time. You click and you get the date and time. Very, very simple and straightforward. But to go beyond this, and I don't think I have an example. Yeah, actually this example shows it. So sorry, this is where you link in your code, and this is at the I've structured this in a certain way. Hopefully you can see the last line of code there on 190 is the closing HTML tag. So there are two locations that we put our JavaScript in. At the top, where it may be the actual JavaScript code where we've got the button type and then on click, that's the actual JavaScript. So that will go at the top. We're loading that at the beginning, and then we load the file, sorry to jump back, at the end of the page. So there's a very set structure as to how we load in JavaScript. And the best way to learn this is simply by doing it. So get a tutorial, follow the tutorial, and that will show you exactly what to do, how to do it, and where to put everything. Again, this is just a simple Bootstrap example. That's the core JavaScript. So as it's been commented, placed at the end of the document so the page loads faster. So this is going to take extra time, and we don't want to waste time loading this script before everything else in the body. So we put this at the end. Everything else in the page is loaded, and then this JavaScript is loaded in at the end. So it's easier for the web browser to load the HTML content, put it on the page, and then load in the JavaScript. So hopefully that's been a decent enough explanation as to how this works and why it works that way. But that's where we'll be. That's where you would be placing the JavaScript if you're using it. Headings then, this one should be pretty straightforward. We've got 6 heading tags, and we use these to show visual hierarchy. These are just obviously very simple Times New Roman heading tags. You can see the difference in them. They haven't been styled. They've been just set up. Again, it was a quick quick W3C Schools screenshot. We will style those differently. We can style the we can put obviously different fonts in. We can work with different font sizes. So H1 can be bigger, H6 can be bigger than what we see there, but within the scale, depending obviously on the project, depending what we actually design or want. But this will show visual hierarchy in a page, and it is always at play here. This is the BBC Football webpage. Hope you hopefully I can recognize it as such, but everything that's circled in the page is the same. I think it's an H3 tag. Okay, and even the actual headline, the most important one, it says finishing season seems increasingly unlikely. That one is actually still an H3 tag. It's just styled slightly differently. So the BBC page uses all these headings are exactly the same, and they have one different at the top. So they've got a very clear visual hierarchy, and it also works the same with the actual image. The feature image is twice the size of every other thumbnail, okay, in terms of length, and in actual dimensions, it's 4 times. There's four of the smaller thumbnails go into the feature image, but there's a clear visual hierarchy built there. It is very simple. You can see everything is exactly the same and follows the same structure, but that creates a visual hierarchy that they have their one feature image, their one feature story, and then everything else fits in across the page, and it's all the same. It's maybe structured different. As you can see, watch and listen is the only real categorization there, where they've got video content or audio content. The rest is all web page links. So the header, then, this is the container for the introductory content or set of navigation links. So it will typically contain the most important heading elements. So that could more than likely be your H1 tag. It will hold the logo or the icon. It'll have authorship information, and you can have several header elements in one document. Okay, it would be a more complex document. It's sometimes just easier just to work with one, but there's nothing wrong with it. You could be, where this example on the screen there is just placing the header section within the article. You could have plenty of articles, several articles in a web page, and your structure there, maybe jumping back, following this example where each story is an article with a header, with the header section for the title, and working it that way. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that, but you will follow the same structure, and it will essentially be a copy and paste job, but that is where we would have that, or how we would structure that. Navigation then, fairly straightforward. This is where our links are for the website. Okay, they can be worked quite differently. Okay, typically they'll be at the top of the page. Some sites, Amazon, eBay, bigger e-commerce sites, may have 2 sets of navigation, one across the top, one down the side panel. There are different ways that you can work this. This obviously works different with mobile screens. You maybe have the hamburger menu element that then pulls in the navigation off screen from an off-screen position. But as far as our HTML code goes, this is where our navigation links are. They're always going to be within this nav tag, and it doesn't matter how many there are or how deep they go. You could have drop-down menus upon drop-down menus depending on the complexity of the site, but they're always going to be nested within the nav element. One of the more straightforward aspects of the HTML5 coding that changed. Nav just really structured it better for everyone. So here's a quick example. There's three links here. So it's very simple navbar example. You can't see this obviously in the screenshots, but you can see the image there. The home is currently selected, one because it's with a red underline, and then when you click on product or contact us, the red underline would grow underneath, underline each one of those. But you can see in the code example, we've got our nav, we've declared a class because we're styling it in a particular way within the bootstrap, more than likely. But you can see exactly how that then is structured. We've got our unordered list, so we're stripping away our bullet points, and then we've got our list of home, product, and contact us. And so just a very simple example of how this works. Article then, this is another new aspect to HTML5, and this, like it says, just identifies and specifies independent self-contained content. So this could be the BBC's football layout. We have each article is a picture, a title, a category, and the published date. And it will make sense on its own. Should be possible to distribute it independently from the rest of the site. So we can put that in its own page and own layout. You can take the BBC football example, strip out the football, strip out the sport, and put in Northern Ireland news or English news or world news. The layout is going to be the same. So the article is, in terms of the HTML code, is the same. It's the content that makes it different. So we can repeat that every time. Potential sources then and examples for this article element are there. We've discussed the news story. That one fits really well. But within the other examples, they're variations kind of on a theme. Okay, because a forum post can be the same as a blog post, and there's an overlap in terms of what is actually going on. And then equally within a comment, you can comment on both a forum post and a blog post. And if you think of something like YouTube, you've got the actual video, and there is essentially a forum underneath, where people comment on the video. It is a comment. It does fit within the book. There's a blurred line, basically, is what I'm saying, between these things, that the article tag can be used for all of these and interchangeably, because they just overlap and work really well together. And so this is just the code example. So you can see exactly, there's, in terms of the actual code of what we see, with the Google Chrome and the Microsoft Edge section, there's no difference. Okay, we wouldn't necessarily see a difference on the page because we're just seeing the content, but it's in the structure. When we put this within the article tags, it just adds a structure to what we're doing. And you would really need to go back, like I said at the beginning, to go back to see previous versions of HTML and how that was coded, to see how article has changed things and tidied it up and made things a lot easier to read. Okay, because you can see in that simple example, you can see the articles are clearly defined within the code and everything's within them. That makes things a lot nicer and easier to read in terms of an actual web page. So that really has improved how we read, and it's improved our semantic code, which has been a great thing to see, because it really does make it easier. Section then, section really, it defines sections in a document: chapters, headers, footers, any other sections of the document. I'm jumping through this one because if you're paying attention, you could look at this very quickly and go, okay, what's the difference between section and article? Which I know I'm jumping through it because it does work the same way, but the question is there, what is the difference? When is it right to use them? When do I use one over the other? The spec says, and this is the W3C school, so our standards committee. The article element represents a complete or self-contained composition in a document, page, application, or site, and that is in principle independently distributable, reusable in syndication, so we can reuse it. It could be a forum post, magazine or newspaper article, blog entry, user submitted content, interactive widget or gadget, or any other independent item of content, which we've pretty much said already. But in real life, what is the actual answer? Because it's one thing having the spec, what does it mean in real life? Getting away from the jargon. Think of it not just as a newspaper article or a blog post, but as an article of clothing. When we're talking about the article tag, okay, we can use clothing in different contexts. Okay, so if we have a pair of trousers, you can wear them with different outfits. So you can dress them up, go out for dinner with a shirt. You can dress them up even more, going for an interview, wearing a shirt, tie, jacket, that sort of thing. or you can dress it down with a jumper or a t-shirt and a pair of Converse. You know, you can work both ways. Don't need to bother with section or how it differs from article. Okay, it was invented as a generic wrapper for heading so that the browser could determine the HTML5 document outline. So in real life, you can ignore section entirely and stick with article. They both work the same way. They both essentially do the same thing. You could equally ignore article and choose section if that just works better in your head. You know, here's a section for this, because I know I think in a literary sense. So article will always, like it says on the screen, article will always have a connection in my head with newspapers or reading or journal documents. But section sounds different to me in my head. Okay, this is a section on whatever, you know, this is a section for the Google map to be embedded. This is the section for the contact form. If that works better for you in your head, stick with one and ignore the other. The good news is they both work in an interchangeable way, so we can work with them exclusively in that sense, either article or section, and we're going to see no real difference to our code. It's not going to display any differently, so it's purely a semantic difference. And the main takeaway here is, if in doubt, okay, I've said use article. I've just kind of went back on that. Use whichever one you're happiest with, but you go with it and stick with it. Okay, you won't go wrong, and your code will still work. And that's the main thing. Okay, when we get beyond the foundation degree, when we get into the world of work, there are a group of people who may typically be managers who you'll find don't really care how it works, just that it works. So it doesn't matter in your code whether you use article or section. If it works on the page, if it looks the way it's supposed to, works the way it's supposed to, acts the way it's supposed to, then that's good enough. So be a wee bit sort of efficient and expedient with your code. Don't get hung up on, do I use one or the other. In terms of coursework too, Mel or I'll be marking your coursework, but we won't really have a difference whether you use article or section. It's whichever you use consistently and to a high standard. You know, that's what we're looking for, the standard of your code. So if you choose one or the other, brilliant, but choose one or the other and stick with it if that's what makes you happy and content that you're doing something right. Okay, because it's ultimately about what you feel in your own head. Am I happy with this? Is it going the right way? So on, so on. So make the choice and get on with it, really. Footer then. Footers, again, it really just sets out the layout, the semantic layout of our web page compared to previous versions of HTML. And the footer obviously defines the footer section of the HTML document, and it can contain information about its containing elements. So we can have authorship information, copyright information, contact information. We can have a sitemap. We can have a back to top link if the page is particularly long, or some sites will actually just do it because they've made that design choice to have, you know, as soon as you start scrolling back down the page, there'll be a little back to the top link. That's where that'll load in, but that you can find that there, or any other related documentations or information. The example there doesn't really, you know, it's not a difficult example to work out. It's just showing who it's being posted by, contact information, very simple. But when we look at these two examples, okay, this is the footer from Smashing Magazine, which is a web design magazine. Here we have all the topics that they cover. So you can see their categories. Okay, it's not so much a sitemap, but this is everything that they will write on. So if you're looking for something in a particular category, user experience, web design, UI, you know, JavaScript, mobile, design systems, design pattern, design, CSS, HTML, they're probably the ones that we'll be responsive web design will be the ones that we'd focus on. But if you want to read on anything in that category, you click on those links. You then have some extra links at the bottom. You write for us, contact us, about us, the privacy policy, membership login, delivery times, how to advertise with them, and then two little images. But that's their footer. That's the entirety of their footer. So it can really be set up while I've said there is a list of things that you will typically see, you won't always see them. So it really does depend on the actual website. So do take my list with a pinch of salt. This next example is Queen's University Belfast, which is a huge site. To get this all on one screen, I had to zoom out because it's quite big. But you can see there are almost two footer sections here. The top one with the map and the links, and then the grey one at the bottom where it gives their member of the Russell Group, which is it's a group of the top 20 universities in the UK. So Queen's are part of that group. There are other universities, like Cambridge, Oxford, I think Edinburgh. There's 20 of them basically. They're part of that, so they're advertising that. QAA is it's the quality assurance something. I can't remember what the other A stands for, but they're like the inspectors for universities just to make sure that they're teaching to the right standard. We submit to them as well because of the foundation degree. Athena Swan is I'm not actually too sure what they are, but those images are all just kind of badges that companies will have. If it's an engineering company, they'll have ISO images. But the two layers, the two sections of the footer just show you what's going on. Okay, the information at the top is much more important and relevant because if you want to contact them, those details are there. They've got some things that maybe legally need to be there. Okay, you've got the legal section, they've got accessibility policies, they've got the modern slavery statement, and then they've got different bits of information about the site, about who they are, different services, and so on. This is also important because it also, someone like Queen's, and when I say someone like Queen's, I mean a company or organization and it is usually, I've seen it with universities. There are bigger companies that will have a three-click policy on their website, which is essentially they want visitors to get what they're looking for and whatever page they need to get to within 3 clicks. So homepage, click into a category, maybe a subject area, click into a course. There you are. That because the site is so big, they need a way of managing it in a way that makes it easy for the user. So this is just another way of doing this because if I don't know the Queen site, well, I can scroll to the bottom and information, find a course. Or if I want to work for Queen's, job opportunities, I'm very quickly drilling down into the information that I want to have. And so while an organization like Queen's can't have a sitemap in their footer because of the sheer size of it, they'll obviously use a search bar for that to make that much easier. But this really helps people find information on the Queen site, which when you look into it, is a huge site. When you think about all their different departments, all the different things going on, it's just a huge site. So this is a way of working around it. So the footer section can really become a section that is very important to your site because it can help people get what they're looking for. It may not be important in terms of the rest of the page, but if I want to know the library times, well, I'm not interested in the rest of the stuff. I want to find the library quickly. Well, there's the link in the services section. If I want to get my email, I don't want to type in the exact URL address in the top bar. I'll click on staff student email in the services section again. So you can see how this can become, it's not so much a forgotten part of the page where just everything gets dumped. It can become a very specific and very nuanced design element to really help visitors in that way. So the generic HTML5 page structure, then we've covered everything, and so we're now putting it together. Well, we've nearly covered everything. We haven't touched on a slide, but you can see there just in the image how just how it all fits together. Okay, section and article, we could cut one out and just duplicate. It's absolutely fine. Aside, I'm not really discussing any of them again because I have seen, we have went through them in detail. But the side section is really just for things that, as it sounds, goes to the side. Okay, so it could be a sidebar of links. And you did see this more from Gears a couple of years back, maybe 5 years plus. where if you look at some blog pages, will still have it. They'll have the main blog content, but then at the side they'll have links to other pages and other blog titles, and that's where that really comes in. That if the designer or developer wants to put in other content that is important but not as important as the main content of the page. In the aside section, that's where you would also typically find advertising. So the company may rent out that space, for advertising of different things. It could equally be advertising their own products and linking to it that way. So that's where that would go in there. But you can see how the page is structured very quickly, and how it is a lot better structured. And I'm saying that comparing that to previous versions of HTML, which were, when I learned how to code, this is so much easier, so much more straightforward, because everything goes within its section. So you can really build up a page quite simply, quite quickly, just by using these 5 lines, 5 tags of code. Certainly think there'll be a lot more that will go into it, but that is the nature of a page. Or we can put more in, but that it's going to follow that structure. And if we have that structure, then not much can go wrong. And then we can play around with things. We can move sections, and we can work in with our grid systems and move the layout, but the actual code still works in the same way. So layout techniques then, we're touching on these in a light sense, rather. We have talked about frameworks and grids last week and in other weeks. I'm not really going to go over them again, but these are the different layouts that are available to you. Okay, as you can see, I've made it big and bold. You want to avoid tables, and I'm saying this in the context of a layout technique. Before I learned HTML, tables was the way they laid out a web page. And if you're struggling to visualize this, think of a spreadsheet. Okay, think of all the columns and rows. Now think of that as a table, and that's how the layout was worked. Okay, and it was fine because it worked, and it gave a bit of structure to the layout, but it wasn't great. Okay, you now want to move towards the Flexbox, the framework, if you're using one, but mostly the CSS grid. Okay, it is you can use float. That can push it. Think of that as left or right align, like in a Word document. You can use tables, okay, for tabular content. So if you're creating a website for a restaurant and they have their menu, use a table. Absolutely fine. If you're working for a company who has like a subscription model and they have different prices, your sort of low price, medium price, high price, depending on whatever the services are, absolutely use a table, because that is the right thing to do. What we're talking about here is layout. Never use tables for layout. Use them for what they're intended, which is tabular content. You could, if you have spreadsheet information that you put in the table, to kind of recreate it, absolutely fine. Okay, not a problem. If you're looking at voting histories, yeah, stick it in the table. That works. Okay, the content has to work in a table for you to use a table, but you can't use it for layout technique. That's the big thing here that I'm probably taking too long to get across. But we want to work with, you really want to get at home with the bottom one, the grid. Okay, it overlaps with the framework because frameworks and grids, they'll have, the framework will have a grid, which is absolutely fine. So you want to get at home with either of those. More so the grid, within in terms of layout. You don't, because like we said last week, you don't have to use a framework, but grids are a good system to get into the habit of using. So worked examples. We're going to jump out of the presentation here. No, that. So, where are we? Yeah, here we are. So, sorry, let's dismiss that. So this is a W3C Schools example, as you can see in the address bar. Right. Right, that's not working. Okay, so you can see the layout of the page. It's a simple page. Okay, you can see it's a blog layout. Okay, you can see your popular posts. That would be in a side section. Okay, this would all be in a side section. But we're just going to jump into the code, and I'm not going to go through everything in the code. I just want to. I've picked these examples because W3C schools, great learning content, but as you'll see, and this is what I'm wanting to pick out, they have commented appropriately, and so I'm really wanting to highlight this as good practice, but also something to really take on board for coursework too, because it's what we're going to be looking for. As you can see, the commented sections are not huge. They don't take a lot of work, but it just sets out your structure. Okay, so we've got our blog entry section here. We don't need to worry about the class because we're working within a grid. So that's just calling in the grid. But each blog entry then is commented. So this, in terms of our HTML code, if we look through this, that you'll probably find this is, yeah. We compare the top line, line 29, with line 52. We're calling in the same class. Different. Then we've got an image, alt text, so on. We've got a W3 container. It's the same. Okay, that's the key point here. So here's what we see. Here's what we see. We've put in one section of code, and then we can duplicate that each time, and that really cuts down our design time. But the key thing that I really just wanted to pick out was there's the end. Okay, so we're commenting about our code and getting into that process, because it really helps, can help your structure. You can also see how it's been indented. Okay, contrast that. No, not that one. Google. It's just lines of code. Okay, there's no real indentation. Okay, there's maybe a bit there. Not really anything worth talking about. But it's so much easier to read. Get into the habit of indenting your code. It will really make life easier for you, and it's a lot easier to find if something goes wrong. Okay, so yeah, we just should. So we want to find a class. Okay, that you never search for class because there are 64 of them. But if that's what we're looking for, you can see that it's highlighted, and you can see that it's nice and easy to see. If we jump across to Google, I don't even know what to search for. Okay, child. I did actually see that in the text, and they're still highlighted. They're still easy to see, but you can hopefully see the point I'm making. It's not as easy to work out, not as easy as this. And I know that this example page is a lot simpler than the Google page. I know it's maybe not a fair comparison, but the point is, make your code very simple to work with, because the easier you make it ultimately on yourself, if anything goes wrong, the fix should be easier. But the key part here is everything's commented, beginning and end. There's our footer, and it makes life easier for everyone. Like that. The next example, these are just variations ultimately of things. Okay, we've got we've got a side here, but working in the same layout, and we have our same code. So again, we're declaring the same things in the same order. Okay, in this we've got an internal style section, which is absolutely fine. We'll keep going. There we go. That's ending there, and then everything is there. Now this isn't as commented, but it's still not that long, that page, that we can still work with, because our body content is here. So it's not an awful lot of actual code that we're working with. So life is still quite easy, but it's still comment, it's still indented. We can still see things quite clearly and work it out from there. With this is the actual row there. So we're jumping back to our code. That's what we're working with here. About me. This is where we're coming in here. And then we've got our title heading. So you can see how the page is working across and how we make use of duplicating code. Okay, don't write everything on the page out by hand. Where you can copy and paste, do. Okay, even if it's your navigation. Okay, ultimately a link is a link. Okay, what I would tend to do at the beginning is work out how many links I need to have, how many pages I'm working with, write out one, copy and paste, and then change the individual details. Okay, that's just sitting there ready for us to change. But make life easy on yourself, because that's once you've got your links set up, you're just changing the direction of them and what we actually see. So that again, it's making life easy for yourself. And certainly where we saw here, there's absolutely no need to we've got our blog entry there. Why would you rewrite everything again? Copy and paste and then change the specifics, the date, the title, image, content. Just make life nice and easy for yourself in that way. This is the last example from memory, but yeah, we're working with Bootstrap 4 in this, so hopefully very familiar. But you can see the familiar look and feel of the Bootstrap page. And again, we're working with the code. Okay, it's nice and indented. We can work out where it's going, what's going where. We can you'll key in with the words that you see in the page more than the actual text. So fake image, there we are. So that's where we're working with straight away. Those two. So that really helps with changing your code. So because when you as you guys hopefully found last week, when you put in a framework, put in a template and start working with it, you're manipulating the code more than actually working with it. And so it's really helpful to be able to build that very quickly, but work the structure, because the structure, as we saw in the presentation, the HTML5 sort of general layout isn't going to change in terms of the code. The layout is what's going to change. So when we get the HTML code into our heads, we know the layout, the structure. The layout is just playing around with CSS, and so we can take a wee bit more time. And my process for building a website would always be to work the layout first of all, and then play around, because we can change fonts, change colors, play with padding and margins and so on all day long. But it's the most important thing is the actual content. Okay, and this is why this text becomes important, because I don't need to know what the text is going to be there just yet. I just need to know that that's the title heading, that's the size. I'm happy with the size, happy with the font. I can then work those later and make a note and come back to them. It's the structure that's important to get right first. So yeah, there are the examples. So into today's tasks. Actually, I'm jumping straight back out of that. Sorry. Yeah, today's task is the code snippet tutorial, which is this document here. So this is a tutorial that's going to take. Mel and I have decided to take this over 2 weeks. Okay, so we're kind of straddling the Easter holidays as of today, really, as of later today. Off for 2 weeks. So this tutorial is going to take 2 weeks to build. Okay. It's a code snippet tutorial. Okay, basically, in the table, there are lots of titles of different snippets of code that you're going to find. Okay, and they're all self-contained bits of code. So, and you're going to build them. So, image slideshow. You're going to build an image slideshow in the HTML. You're going to have everything self-contained within that document, and you're going to save it off. You're going to do the same for the accordion, hover drop downs, click drop downs, so on, so on, so on, throughout all those. Okay, there are 3 sites that I have found these from. In the most part, there is no real right and wrong answer, so you can certainly use those sites. You can go off and find your own. That's absolutely not a problem. The main thing is that while there's not one right answer, there is a wrong answer, and that is if it doesn't work, then that's obviously wrong. If you, I mean, and by that I also mean there are loads of different ways to work out an image slideshow. We could all come up with a different answer and different solution, but if they work, then they're all right. So that's where I'm kind of leaving it open-ended. You can work your own image slideshow. If there's one that you wanted to try, you'd seen it, and this is the time. Okay. The way they're going to be structured in each is that you're going to have obviously the title, that'll be the name of the code. So you're setting up your web page, put in the title, just comment it, explain what the code is and what it does. So things like an image slideshow, it's going to be fairly straightforward, but you may look at modal box and straight off the bat right now not know what that is. So writing in the explanation, once you see it, you can say what you see and explain it pretty straightforwardly. And that will help. You then have the HTML code and then a preview or screenshot of the code working. Okay, and you're going to do this for each of these. Now, like I said, this is going to take this week and the next week class, which will be week 11. So what I'm suggesting is for this week, take 2 columns. Okay, do the first 2 this week, do the next 2 after Easter. Okay, the idea is here that obviously coursework 2, you're going to be building a site, and it's open book, so you can go off and find the answers when you get the site that you've got to design. But if you have a lot of these things yourself in your own library, then that makes life a lot quicker. That's the big thinking here, so that you can then, as the title suggests, they're code snippets. These are just putting in, sign up form is going to be a sign up form, contact form is going to be a contact form, but they just put them in nice little small web pages, and you're breaking down the page into its component parts. So portfolio gallery, that's all you're going to see in the page. 3-column layout can just be a 3-column layout with some sample text. Okay. And so the idea is whenever you see the site, you should hopefully for coursework 2, you should be able to actually break it out into pieces with in your head and go, okay, that's what that is. That's and name each section, and then it could be a case, and I'm not saying this is the case, but it could be the case that you could piece together. Well, responsive, that's a bad example because that's going to be in it hopefully anyway. But you could start off with an image slideshow, followed with top navigation with some social media buttons and lazy load. That wouldn't really make a website web page as such, but hopefully you get the idea of what I'm saying, that you have all these tools, these bits of code ready and waiting for if and when you need them. Okay, and that's the key part. Okay, it also gives you experience in building these things in isolation, so you don't have to worry about how it plays in with the rest of the page, or whether it's responsive. You don't need to worry about the modal box being responsive in that task, because all you're doing is focusing on building the actual box. Okay, testimonials are fairly straightforward as well. They're just usually little bits of a phrase that someone has said, and they'll scroll across the page, similar to a slideshow, but text-based and not necessarily automatic. Okay, you could click through or have an arrow, but again, there's no right or wrong answer in that. If you want to use arrows, that's fine. If you want to use sort of bullet point buttons, then that's equally fine. But that's the tutorial, guys. Some of them may be slightly bigger than others. Okay, putting in Google font should be pretty easy. But I'm not. It's a line of code essentially, but I won't say any more if you haven't done that. Other things like the masonry layout, that is pretty good. Okay, it's a lot of fun because it looks really well. and you've probably seen this in different sites, but it's where images, it's typically images, but it's where they are different sizes, but they all still fit together in the space that the screen gives them, and it's all quite responsive, but it's really good fun, and it's a really good tool to be able to have and know how to do, because it does look quite effective. And that's it, guys. That is the tutorial. That's everything for today. I'll come back to here if there are any questions. Not seeing everything, audio's fine, which is great, because that was out at the very beginning. But guys, if that's everything, if there's no questions coming through or anything, I'm happy to say thank you very much for joining me today. I was wondering a little, because I know our principal sent out a message that might have implied we'd finished, but I'm glad to see that for Easter, but I'm glad to see that you joined me. So thank you. This stuff will be up on Canvas. The presentation is as is the tutorial page. Just with the W3C schools, you will need to search for how to. Okay, I have looked high and low. There is no link that I can see straight off that site when you go to, if you're working from the homepage. But if you search for how to, you will find a good section that will help you for quite a few of these. And then yeah, so I will put up the video recording once I've finished polishing it off. The task is there. It's split over 2 weeks, so complete the first 2 columns. Guys, if there's nothing else, then thank you very much and have a great Easter. And I'll see you all after the holidays. So thank you.